Right, so in this revision paper we're going to be looking through questions on the topics in geometry and measures that we've covered in the autumn term, and the algebra topics where we're actually we're dealing with algebra and coming up with solutions. So first of all we focus on the geometry and measures, and the first couple of questions are on transformations. The first one, reflect the triangle S in the line y equals 2. So the command here is reflect, and when something is being reflected we need to know where to place our mirror, and the mirror is going to go on the line y equals 2. Now here is a mistake that when we were practicing this for the first time the other month I was making a big deal about. Still, in the last test that we did, people were making this common mistake. When people are drawing the line y equals 2, because the y-axis is vertical, they assume that a line y equals something is going to be vertical as well. And the most common place they would draw that is there. So you've got a vertical line going through a number 2. But this number 2 is the x coordinate 2. And everywhere on that line has x equal to 2. So what we want for the line y equals 2 is to go through the y coordinate 2, which is there. So it's really important that you watch out for that. That's such a common mistake. So the line y equals 2 is the line which goes through every point which has the y coordinate of 2, which is there. Then when we're reflecting that, what you need to remember is that the distance from the object, the original shape, to the mirror is identical to the reflection. So that point there is 1 square above the mirror, so its reflection would be 1 square below the mirror. Similarly, that point there will end up there, and the other corner of the triangle, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 above the mirror, will become 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 below the mirror. Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4 below the mirror. So our reflection will look like that. So watch out for that. That is such a common mistake people make. With the second one, describe fully a single transformation that transforms triangle S onto triangle T. So we're looking for a collection of words here which describes that. There's 3 marks for this question, so they're going to be looking for 3 important parts that describe what's happening to take S to T. Hopefully by looking at it you can see that it has been turned. So the transformation, the mathematical word for that is rotated. So there's 1 mark if you've spotted that it's a rotation. Now this side here has turned so that it has become, rather than vertically up, horizontal. So it's turned through a quarter turn, which is 90 degrees. So 90 degrees. And then we need to use the direction, because 90 degrees in that way is going to have the shape in a different place to this way. So that's an anti-clockwise turn, is turning opposite to the hands of a clock. So the second mark is for saying 90 degrees anti-clockwise. So we've got 1 mark for rotated, 1 mark for 90 degrees anti-clockwise. The third mark is for saying where it's been turned around. So the way that the best way to do this is using tracing paper, which you'll be given. Copy your original shape, and then we need to pin that somewhere to see where it's being rotated to end up there. Okay. The obvious place to start would be the origin, but let's not start there just so that you can see. If I thought maybe it was going to rotate around the point -3, -2, I would pin it there and then perform the rotation, and we can see that's not going to get it there. As I said, for something like this, it's going to be pretty obvious on an intermediate tier paper. So if we put it at 0, 0 and turn it, you can see it overlaps perfectly. So for the third mark, we need to say about origin or 0, 0. Okay, the origin is 0, 0 at the centre there. So that's where your 3 marks come from. Part C, translate. So when you're translating, you're going to move that shape as if you could slide it like a draft or a chess piece about the board. And the information in the vector there tells you how you are going to move it. The top value is your x direction, and the bottom value is the y direction. So it's not a coordinate. We're not going to move it to the point -4, -4. We're going to take each point on this and move it, and because it's negative, it's going in the negative x direction 5 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then down 1, 2, 3, 4. So the top of my triangle is going to end up there. Translation doesn't change the size, so I don't need to worry about translating the rest. I can just copy the triangle over now. So it's going to be 3 squares by 2 square, and then join that. And then another thing they like to ask you about when we talk about translations and translation vectors is what we would have to do to take the image and send it back to the object. So if you think about that, what I would have to do is basically go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the positive x and 1, 2, 3, 4 in the positive y. So all that happens is you change the sign on the original vector. So here we have a rotation where we actually have to do the rotation ourselves. So we've got command, rotate, the direction of the turn, 90 degrees anti-clockwise, and where we're going to pin our tracing paper to. So as I mentioned earlier, you'd be given the tracing paper in the exam. So make sure you cover your axis. The point we're going to turn around is -2, 3. So -2, 3 is there. So mark that on so that the examiner can see you're trying to do it about the right place. Trace your shape. Put a marker on your grid. So when I turn this through 90 degrees anti-clockwise, I know that my arrow is going to end up pointing directly left. So I pin, I rotate until my arrow is pointing directly left, and then I stop. And that's going to be where my image is going to end up. And then the last transformation to practice is an enlargement. So here's the command, enlarge. When we're enlarging a shape, we need to know how much bigger or smaller it's going to become. So it's a scale factor of half, so it's going to be shrinking. It's going to be half the size of the original, and it's giving me a center of enlargement. More often than not, you'll get a center of enlargement, which specifies where you are measuring your enlargement from. So we're measuring from there. So what we now do is figure out what displacement we have to take, what translation we have to take to go from there to that point there. So for this one, we're going to go across 8 and down 2. So in the enlargement of a scale factor half, we're going to half those movements. So rather than across 8 down 2, we're going to go across 4 down 1. So that point ends up there. This point is across 8 down 8, so it'll become across 4 down 4. and this point is across 4 down 8, so that would become across 2 down 4. So there's our enlargement. Okay, so those are transformations. Then we come to question 3. A square has a perimeter of 80 centimeters. A circle fits exactly inside the square as shown in the diagram. So the circumference of the circle is touching the sides of the square. Calculate the circumference of the circle. Give your answer correct to 1 decimal place. You must show all your working. And this is an OCW question. So how you organise your maths is going to earn you an additional 2 marks. So I know it's a square, so all the sides are the same length. So if I know its perimeter, I can work out how long each side is. So length of sides will be 80 divided by 4, which is 20, and I'm talking about length, so the units are centimeters. Once I know the length of the sides, because the circumference is touching, that means that the diameter of the shape of this circle is also going to be 20. So the diameter of circle equals 20 centimeters. So the radius will be half of that, which is 10 centimeters. The formula for the circumference of a circle is pi 2 times pi times radius. You may also know that as pi times diameter, but when we were practicing these a couple of weeks ago, I was getting you to remember it in that form. So for me, that's going to be 2 times pi times 10. I can put that onto my calculator. 2 times pi has got its own little button, shift and this times 10, times 10. Press equals, and you get 62.83185. So I've written that as longer than the 1 decimal place, just to show that I've got that bit right in case I mess up the 1 decimal place. But 1 decimal place will be the first number after the decimal point, which is 0.8. So it's either 0.8 or 0.9. We look at the next value up, it's less than 5, which means that's closer to 8. And the units of circumference are centimeters. So the maths, if you get 62.8, will get you 4 marks. To get the additional marks for the OCW, you just want to make clear what each line of maths is doing. So you're not writing stories, you're just stating what you're doing. And then the second one is for using consistent units through your work. Question 4 is another OCW question. So we've got ABCF is a rectangle, CDEF is a trapezium, BD is a straight line. AB is 7, BD is 9, DE is 3. The perimeter of rectangle ABCF is 24, and we want to work out the area of the trapezium. Well, the area of the trapezium is given on the front of the exam paper, and it's written like this: A, B, H, area equals a half A plus B times H. So in order to work the area of that out, I need to find the height. In order to find the height, I need to find the height of the rectangle. Now, I know the perimeter is 24, and I know that that is 7, which means that is also 7. If that is 7 and that is 7, that's 14. So the length of CB will be 24, take away those 2, which is 10, and that's both of them, so I then divide that by 2 to get 5 centimeters. So just be clear again, the total distance around the outside of the rectangle is 24. I take off 14 because I know those two, it leaves me 10, which means together those two have to add up to 10 centimeters. They're of equal length because it's a rectangle, so they're 5. So if that's 5, I can then say, so CD equals 9 take away 5 is 4 centimeters. Now, area of CDEF, which is what the question is asking me to find, is going to be half times A plus B times height, which is 4. So 7 plus 3 is 10. You've got to work out what's in brackets first. So half of 10 times 4. Half of 10 is 5. 5 fours, 20, and the units of area, centimeters squared. So the OCW for that, again, is just for the little bit of explanation you're doing when you're finding these numbers. So rather than that 5 just coming up somewhere, even if you've done it in your head, you have been able to make clear what you've done to get that. And then the second mark is for the consistent use of correct units. Okay, question 5. A triangular prism of length 2 meters is shown below. So its length is 2. AC is 21, so its height is 21. Its sloping length is 35. And angle BAC is a right angle triangle. Calculate the area of triangle ABC. Give your answer in centimeters squared. You must show all your working. So area of a triangle is half base times height is the way that you learn it. But the height has to be at right angles to the base, because all a triangle is half a rectangle. So if you think that to make a rectangle, you need to have that right angle there, and the base times the height would be what you'd use for a rectangle. So I need to know what AB is. Now I can see I've got a right angle triangle, so I'm thinking Pythag or trig. I don't know any other angle other than 90 degrees, and I'm not asked to find it, so it's not trig, it's Pythag. So what we are working with here, just to make it a little bit more clear, and do this in the exam, just lift out the right angle triangle that you're working with. I want to find AB. AB is a shorter side. I know from my revision that with Pythag I square the sides, then I either add or subtract. Because I'm trying to find a shorter side, I need to subtract. So I'm going to do 35 squared to take away 21 squared, and then I remember I have to square root my answer. So you can do it in separate steps, or you can do it all in one go. Okay, in class a lot of you are doing it all in one go. So square root 35 squared take away 21 squared equal 28 centimeters. So I now know that the base is 28. Now the question wasn't asking me what's the length of the base. The question was asking me for the area of the triangle, but I needed to find that in order to go on and work out the area of the triangle. So now I can say area of triangle ABC is a half times base times height. So do half of 28 is 14, so that's going to be 14 times 21, which is 294, and then its area, so centimetres squared. Part B, calculate the volume of the prism. So again, one of the few things that you're told on the front of the exam paper, you have the area of the trapezium, and you're also given that the volume of a prism is the area of the cross section, which is what we've just worked out, times the length. So the volume will be the area of cross section. Now in order to times it by the length, we have to have the units the same. So because I've worked that out in square centimetres, I've got to change 2 metres into centimetres, which you know 100 centimetres in a metre. So we're going to do 294 times 200, which is 58,800. It's telling you must give you units of your answer, so even though that's right, that's only going to get you 2 marks. To get the third mark, you need to include centimetres, because those are the units we're using, and cubed, because we're measuring volume. So then we come to the algebra revision for today. So what you need to remember with equations is that what you do to one side, you have to do the same to the other. What we want to do here is to isolate the W. At the moment, it's having divide 5 done to it, so we've got to do the opposite of dividing by 5, which is multiplying by 5. You do that to one side of the equal sign, you have to do it to the other as well. So when you multiply that by 5, it just leaves you W. And when you multiply that by 5, you get 50. Real common mistake there is just to think that W is 10 divided by 5 and write 2 down. I see so many students who do really well later in the paper getting that one wrong. This one's a bit trickier because what this is saying is 42 divided by something is 7. The algebra for this is probably more complicated than figuring itself. What do you divide 42 by to get 7? But let's work with the algebra. What we have to do first of all is get the x up from the bottom of the fraction. And to do that, multiply both sides by x. So x is being divided by, so the opposite of divide is times. That will leave 42 on its own on one side and 7x on the other side. Then to get the x on its own, we have to do the opposite of times it by 7, which is dividing by 7. 42 divided by 7 is 6, so x is 6. As I said, you probably would figure that out yourself. 42 divided by something is 7, and then go through your 7 times table, arriving at 6. Part C is another equation. It's a multi-step equation where we've got numbers and unknowns on both sides, but the steps we go through are the same. So let's get rid of the take 5 from the left-hand side by adding 5. If we add 5 there, we have to add 5 to the right-hand side of the equation as well. That leaves me 13y on the left-hand side. 9y is still there, and plus 32. Now I want to get rid of the y from this side, so I subtract 9y, which means I have to subtract 9y from there. 13 take away 9 is 4y equals 32. Then to get the y on its own, we divide by 4, which means we have to divide that side by 4, leaving me y equals 8. Question 7. Factorize. So when we're factorizing, we practiced that yesterday when we were simplifying. And when you were given a factorize where you've got an x squared, x and a number, that's a quadratic expression, and that needs to trigger in your brain an immediate starting point of double brackets with x's. That's something that you've just got to go looking for. This will be in the second half of the exam paper. Then the method, just to recap from yesterday, is to first of all list the factor pairs of this end number. Factor pairs are 24. I think the one we did yesterday was 24 too. 1, 24, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, and the next one will be 6 and 4. So we're then repeating. So once we get that repeat, we know we can stop, we've got them all. Then, once we've listed our factor pairs, we need to select the pair of numbers that could combine with different signs to add to give -2. So if you look at 1 and 24, you might get 25 out of it, you might get 23 out of it, or -23 or -25. So that is not going to give us -2. Similarly, that won't. Getting closer, this could give us 11 or 5. 4 and 6, we can get a 2 out of that. So the two numbers of 6, we then need to consider the sign. We want -2, so we need that to be +4 take away 6, because 4 take away 6 is -2. So that's the factorizing. That gives us 2 out of the 3 marks. The last bit which we practiced back in September with this was if it is an equation, they make it equal to 0. And what you have to do then is to look at what values of x will make either of these brackets 0. So, for example, if I put x as 6 into there, I get 6 take away 6 is 0. Doesn't matter what's in there then, because anything times 0 is 0. So x equals 6 is one solution. To make this bracket go to 0, x has to be -4. So there are 2 answers. You need to list them both to get that 3rd mark. Grade B. And then the last couple of questions. First one, grade B equation. It's grade B because it's got a fraction. The first thing we want to do is to get rid of these fractional parts. We do that by multiplying by the LCM. We multiply the whole thing by the smallest number that's in the 2 and the 6 times table, which is 6. So we have to multiply each bit of it by 6. When we do that, we write it in a slightly different way. So all I've done, I've put the 4x minus 3 in a bracket, and I've shifted that fraction so that it's under the 6. Then I'm multiplying this by 6. Same thing, shifted the fraction a little bit. And then the other side has to be multiplied by 6 as well. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So what I've done is got rid of that fraction. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that gets us into the marks. I've eliminated my fraction. Once I've done that, that's the end of the grade B skill. We're now down to grade C skills, where we're just dealing with an equation with brackets. Multiply out, so 3 times 4x is 12x minus 9 plus 1 times 7 is 7, 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 29 is 87. 12 plus 7 is 29x, minus 9 plus 1 is minus 8. So we further simplified the equation. This is a grade D equation now. I want to add 8 to both sides. That leaves me 29x on that side, and on this side that leaves me 95. Grade E equation, all I need to do is divide by 29. That leaves me 1x equals 95 divided by 29. It's not 29, it's 19. 12 plus 7 is 19. So I'm going to do 95 divided by 19, which is 5. So x is 5. So you can see how easy it is to make mistakes in questions like that. If I'd have ended up keeping it as 95 divided by 29, out of those 4 marks, I'd have lost 1 mark for that one little slip. And the final question looks horrible. It's grade B, just like the one above. It's one of the very last questions on a paper if it comes up. This one's an inequalities question. Rashid owned N sheep. Ivion has exactly 4 times as many sheep as Rashid. Rashid buys 17 extra sheep. Ivion sells 8 of his sheep. And Ivion still has more sheep than Rashid. Form an inequality in terms of n. Solve the inequality to find the least value of n. You must show all your working. So let's take it one step at a time. Rashid has got n sheep. Ivion has got 4 times as many. So if Rashid had 10, Ivion would have 4 times that, which would be 40. So you'd be multiplying 4 by the n. Rashid buys an extra 17. So that's not 17 times as many, it's just adding an extra 17 sheep to the number he's got. Ivion sells 8 of his, so he's going to have 8 fewer, which means he'll have 4n minus 8. Ivion has still got more sheep than Rashid, so this quantity is going to be greater than the quantity that Rashid has. So there's your inequality. Okay, so there's the first 2 marks, is forming that. Then when we solve the inequality, we're just going to follow the same laws we would if we were working with an equation. The only difference is we're not going to write an equal sign, we're going to write that greater than sign. So first of all, I'm going to add 8 to both sides. That means I have 4n is greater than n plus 25. Then I'm going to take 1n off, which leaves me 3n is greater than, the n's have gone, 25. Then I'm going to divide by 3, which means I've got to divide that side by 3. That leaves me n is greater than 25 over 3. Well, 25 over 3, let's assume this is on a non-calculated paper. So let's do 25 divided by 3. That's going to be 8, remainder 1, 0.3, and so on. So that means n has to be greater than 8.3 sheep. The question's asking you, find the least value of n. So the fewest, you can't have 0.3 of a sheep unless you go to a butcher's. These sheep are alive. So in order for Ivion to have more sheep than Rashid, n needs to be 9. So at least 9 sheep. So n is at least 9. Okay, so that is the revision for today. On Friday there'll be a third paper which will cover probability and the last few bits of algebra that we've covered this term, which includes nth term rules, trial and improvement, and the sketching graphs of quadratics. So that's going to come on Friday. Have a good week.